Ironhawk Studio. Ironhawk Studio is the official studio of the Kevin Allen Show. Ironhawk Financial Studio, Joseph Lombardi, managing partner, right out of Connecticut, but he's serving customers and clients all across the country. That's right, 203-815-3673. Give him a call today. If you have any questions about your financial security, he'll be able to help you out from readjusting your current retirement system right out to making those tough decisions if you're entering into that space and you want to enjoy that money that's, well, the government's getting ready to take from you. That's right, because they're always looking to pick your pockets, folks. Ironhawk Financial shows you how to keep that money in your pocket. Call him today and let him know the Kevin Allen Show sent you. And good morning, and how are you? And just want to say right out of the box here, I am down in sunny Florida. I've been talking to some of my friends and family and people up north, somewhere around 39 degrees, maybe 45 degrees. We'll find out from our guest that's going to be coming on soon. Of course, my good friend and one of the most impressive attorneys in the country, Norm Pattis. We're going to be talking with him about one of his clients. And the interesting part about this client we're talking about is a J6 detainee right now, incarcerated. But the connection here is Donald Trump Jr. issues an urgent plea over Owen Shroyer's treatment in jail. Now, he has a short-term sentence, but his treatment in jail, we're going to get firsthand from Norm about what's going on with Owen. Of course, Owen is connected to Alex Jones. He has his own show, and he'll be returning to that show. I just confirmed that when I was talking to Norm. We'll get all the details on this interesting case. And why is it that Donald Trump Jr. actually is calling this out? There's so many people that have been incarcerated. Why is it that Donald Trump Jr. called this out? We're going to find out. This must be something really concerning. And we'll find out right here on the Kevin Allen Show. We return. And welcome right here. Like I said, Norm, I haven't done this show in a while, and I think I did darn good in that intro right there.
Oh, you sure did. Although you're betraying a sort of regional softness. You're missing these winters. It was like in the 30s this morning. We're going to be getting below freezing. We were the other day. I walked out of my house, hopped in the car, said, "Man, it's a little brisk out here." Looked down at the car thermometer, 27 degrees, and then I thought, it's November. It's time.
It's time. That's right. Beard time. You should be growing your beard out. Listen, it's been a while since we've been on the show, and my whole journey, which transitioning from, and I say transitioning in the proper way, folks. Don't use it in the wrong term.
On the road to Damascus.
Yes, I am. Thank you so much. And it's an honor actually for me to come back and really talk into these really news articles and these things with you. And I didn't plan this. This just happened yesterday. But let's talk a little bit about what's going on with Owen, because there's a lot of people detained in the gulag, but why is this getting attention, especially from Donald Trump Jr.?
Well, you'd have to ask him. I mean, he won't. I don't have his number. I can't ask him myself. But I think that the Shroyer case is becoming a bellwether First Amendment case and will likely go down in history as such. Here's why. Owen Shroyer is a young man. He's in his 30s. He's got his own show on the InfoWars. It's called The War Room. And he reports on events for 3-4 hours a day, 5 days a week as he sees them. And he's got quite a following. On January 6th, he appeared with Alex and others from InfoWars at the Stop the Steal rally on the Capitol. And while there, his group went on to Capitol grounds. They saw a riot taking place, and that riot was going out of control. Owen and others stood on the steps of the Capitol and urged people to leave the grounds, to go elsewhere, not to descend into violence, because that is what the left would want. And that's what critics of the rally would want. In the end, he left. He never entered the building. He didn't engage in any vandalism, any confrontation with police officers. If the offense that he committed that day was trespass, he entered unlawfully onto Capitol grounds and then left. He ended up getting charged by the federal government with that. And the charges took place in an unusual context. As a journalist for InfoWars, Owen had in 2019 attended a hearing in the House Judiciary Committee, chaired by Jerry Nadler of New York. And Owen disrupted that proceeding by basically marching toward the podium and suggesting that Nadler and company, rather than President Trump, should be the folks who are impeded, or should be impeached, rather. Now, the First Amendment gives us the ability to speak, but it places reasonable time, place, and manner limitations on our speech. And Owen disrupted the proceedings. He was charged with a federal offense. I represented him in that. Basically, the deal we struck is he would get what's called a deferred prosecution agreement. The feds, if he honored some conditions, the feds would dump the charges. What were the conditions? Do not go to the Capitol with the intention. They wanted him to not go to the Capitol at all. I said, he's a journalist. You can't
silence him in a sense. They didn't want him to speak.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so they'd not go to the Capitol. We said, no, you can't do that. So the agreement was that he not go to the Capitol with the intention to disrupt proceedings. And that he do 32 hours of community service. We cut this deal late in 19, or maybe late in 20. In early 21, after January 6th, we send the feds a letter. Here's proof of the community service. We want our dismissal. They said, oh, no, you did the math wrong. He owes 2 hours. Owen did 2 more hours and sent it back. And then they said, no, he's under investigation now for January 6th. We filed a motion in court to enforce the motion to dismiss. It never got heard. They charged him with trespass on January 6th. And so in the course of discussing this with prosecutors, I said, why are you doing this? Why him and not other members of the group? They didn't really have an answer, but what they wanted were his cell phones. And so they wanted an agreement that we'd give his cell phones over and they wouldn't have to get a warrant. We thought about it for a while. We let them look at his cell phones. He sat down and waived his Fifth Amendment right to remain silent to answer any questions they had, and that went off without incident. He waived a grand jury indictment and saved the government the trouble of presenting the case to a grand jury, and then ultimately agreed to plead guilty to trespass. At that, and this is where history gets made, at that sentencing hearing, the government filed a sentencing memorandum saying because he spread disinformation, because he had participated in organizing rallies in DC in November and December, because he was an outspoken critic of the electoral results, because he had encouraged people to attend the rally, because after the rally he had justified it, because while on Capitol grounds he chanted 1776 and death to tyrant, because of all this speech and activity, he should go to jail. He should go to jail because this was relevant offense conduct shedding light on the trespass. We took the position, Judge, this is ridiculous. This is not relevant offense conduct. It doesn't show any proof or tend to show proof of any element of the offense to which he pled. What's more, this is the government criminalizing speech. What's more, they're criminalizing speech of a journalist in the context of coverage of an historic event. The author of the pre-sentence report, that is the probation officer, so to speak, who made a sentencing recommendation to the judge, was that Shroyer be given probation. The government came out and lied in its sentencing memo, saying he didn't complete his community service. He did. We showed the judge he did. The government then said he should go to jail for 120 days. The judge split the difference and sent him to jail for 60. We have an appeal pending in the United States District Court for the District of Columbia. In part, by the time the appeal is heard, Owen will be out, but he'll still be on parole, so to speak, or probation, or out on supervised release, as it's called in the federal system. And so that's custody for purposes of the law. We intend to argue to the highest court in the land, if necessary, that permitted speech, protected speech, speech that is protected by the First Amendment, conduct protected by the First Amendment, when it doesn't show proof of an element of the offense, cannot be relevant offense conduct. So we've taken that appeal. I was with Owen 2 weeks ago, I guess 2 weeks ago yesterday, in Oakdale, Louisiana. I turned him into the federal prison down there. And when he went in, this is the Oakdale Federal Correctional Institution, they held him for a week as a COVID precaution. They do this with all new inmates, whether it's necessary or not. We can argue that. But Oakdale was the first federal penal institution that lost a person to COVID, so I understand their caution. Upon his release from solitary confinement, he made phone calls, which he was permitted to do. He made a call to me. He made a call to his colleagues at InfoWars. In his phone call to the colleagues at InfoWars, which was recorded, a 4.5-minute conversation, he basically thanked his supporters for their mail, talked about his resolve to fight, talked about his concerns about the welfare of his listeners and the state of the country, and said at the end that he'd hoped to broadcast from within the prison at some point in the future over the phone. Within hours of that was taped and it was played on the air. Within hours of that, he was placed back in solitary confinement, and he's been held incommunicado ever since. I've not been able to communicate with him. I've
What
written.
policy did they say he violated in order? So you're in my wheelhouse, if you don't mind. I was, as you know, a phone monitor. I know what PSIs are. I mean, I know what your lingo would, but for the audience that's listening, these are sort of internal procedures. What was the violation that the federal detention, facility said that he violated?
That's the disturbing thing is I've not. I wrote to the facility asking for information. They acknowledged my email and said they'd have somebody get back to me who was more knowledgeable. No one has yet. So even though Owen is internally confined, even though he's a prisoner, he has rights within the penal institution,
100%.
including rights to notice and an opportunity to be heard about what policy he violated. I don't know. I suspect that somebody in the institution said, we ain't gonna have this good old boy broadcasting from within our house, And I
I
suspect
don't
it's
think they
something like
talk like
that.
that, Norm. I don't think they talk. I think those folks might be on Owen's side, just for the record. But I do think somebody on the upper echelon, because I've been around that industry, all to the commissioner's office in Connecticut, as you know, there is a lot of that games at play. Do you think the federal government, the FBI, the internal parts that are pushing these agendas are really manipulating even this part of the system?
Unfortunately, I do. As you know, I represent Joe Biggs. I represented Joe Biggs, one of the leaders of the Proud Boys, at the insurrection trial this year. I now represent another one of the defendants in that trial, Zach Rell. I've got them both on appeal, and I know that once they were convicted and their pre-sentence reports, that is their biographical information and events and the circumstances of the offense. Once that report was sent to the Bureau of Prisons, the Bureau of Prisons did a risk assessment of them, and they scored the men low. They scored the men so low that they were eligible for placement in a camp in a low security facility. I'm told by someone who has reason to know this that the U.S. Attorney's Office in D.C. got wind of this and insisted that the classification go higher, so that the terms of incarceration would be more onerous.
So they change the actual system to cater to their position, and they try to. And isn't there a violation of laws, rights? Is something with that?
Yes and no. I mean, the Bureau of Prisons. So there's a problem. The prosecution of the Proud Boys, for example, was conducted by the Department of Justice. That's the same department that supervises the DOJ. So it's not necessarily a conflict, although it seems to me inappropriate that the prosecution, the people who've aligned prosecutors, the people who decided to prosecute, who sought the charges, who sought sentences far more onerous than those that were imposed. It seems wrong for them to be able to also dictate or influence the terms and conditions of their confinement. So I was in Congress yesterday. I went down to Washington, and I had an opportunity to meet with Andy Biggs, a representative of Arizona. Mr. Biggs is chairman of a House subcommittee from the Judiciary Committee relating to the Bureau of Prisons. The director of the Bureau of Prisons testified yesterday, and she was asked some questions about Shroyer and about another J6 inmate. And of course, she had no specific details. It was sort of like the see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil monkey under oath. But after the hearing, I met with Biggs and told Biggs our concerns. And he is interested and will be providing him with more information. We've asked him to place under subpoena and then bring in under oath Matthew Graves, the United States Attorney for the District of Columbia, because we think his office is involved in monkeying with these guys and potentially with Owen Shroyer. And so, Owen is outspoken and he always will be. We are calling attention and called attention yesterday in Congress with Mr. Biggs, with the staff of Representative Matt Gaetz from Florida, with the staff of the House Speaker, Mike Johnson, whose district, by the way, houses the Oakdale Penal Institution, Federal Correctional Institution. We asked him to send a staff member to check on what's going on. We'll see what's going. We'll see what they do. I've never served as a lawmaker, but I get the sense these guys are even busier than lawyers, and I didn't think that was possible. So I think that Donald Trump Jr. has gotten wind of the fact that Owen, who is to the right, is being penalized for his speech, not just in terms of the incarceration for trespass, but also while incarcerated. And so he is calling attention to Shroyer's case. And I'm asking everybody to pay attention to Shroyer's case. I think that the cell Owen Shroyer occupies today is being warmed up for you, Kevin, maybe me, maybe some of your listeners
Mhm.
who are outspoken and say the wrong thing in the wrong way at the wrong time, at least in the eyes of those who are currently in power. So the Shroyer case is important. If you're inclined to contribute to his legal defense, I sent you a link to the Shroyer Legal Defense Fund on
Yep.
Give, Send, Go. We
Mhm.
would appreciate your doing so. Litigation is expensive, and we could use your help. But Owen Shroyer is a political prisoner, in my view. He is being incarcerated because of his speech, and he is suffering under stricter conditions of confinement as a result of his speech. And that's something that should concern everybody on the right and on the left.
It should. And, as someone who is in a position where I get paid, well, I didn't get paid that much over the last 5 years, but I think we'll start getting paid now to speak. I have a real concern, as you said, like, what if I'm no secret in my life, I found God, right? And so what if God isn't the topic that the federal government doesn't want discussed? Could I potentially, as you say, could I be put in Owen's cell when he leaves because I'm speaking proudly about that? I mean, I'm concerned about freedom of speech in general, Norm.
The criminal code has a number of offenses, which are what I'll call fourth outfielders. In a normal baseball team, there are three outfielders, right, center, and left. In a softball game, there might be a fourth. And the purpose of a fourth outfielder is to make it easier to get people out, to let each individual ball player cover more ground. The federal penal code has crimes like, or a penal code has crimes like breach of peace, incitement, um, 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 breach of peace and incitement, or risk of injury to a minor is another one, or reckless endangerment. These are offenses that are very broad, and they are in the eye of the beholder, as it were. Prosecutors get to fit conduct within it as they will. Harvey Silverglate I think he used to write for the Phoenix up in Boston, wrote a famous book called 3 Felonies a Day. And his view is that the federal penal code is so broad and expansive that we each probably commit 3 federal felonies a day just going about our daily business. If that's the case, then prosecutors get to pick and choose among us who to prosecute. Are those decisions influenced by political factors? And the argument and the suspicion is yes. The J6 cases prove it. This is an outrageous chapter in American history. And why do I say that? After the American Civil War, a war that took the lives of 600,000 Americans killed in conflict, in combat, 3 years after that war, when the North won, almost every rebel had been repatriated, and the country went about the business of coming together to build a future. Almost 3 years after a riot that lasted 7 hours on January 6th, we're still prosecuting people and locking them up. And all those people have a tendency to be on the right, and others aren't getting arrested. There was a protest the other night on behalf of Hamas and whatnot, terrorists who went about the business of killing people, innocent people, women, children, taking them hostage. Their supporters stormed the White House the other night, shaking the gates. One arrest. You get the sense that depending on who you are and what you stand for, the same conduct is either a crime or not. And that's the problem of overcriminalization and too much discretion in the hands of prosecutors. I'm asking each and every person who is listening to this broadcast to vote Republican in 2024, even if they run a pumpkin as the candidate. And the reason for that is Merrick Garland has got to go. Merrick Garland has transformed the Justice Department into a political club. And I don't mean a club in which people gather together because they have like-minded views. I mean a weapon. He has weaponized that, and he's using it to penalize the right. Owen Shroyer is a test case.
Aren't you fearful of your own situation because you are so outspoken and you've seen the system destroy just even the rights of your clients? They're going to come after you, Norm, and you know it. I mean, I'm asking a serious question. I mean, do you want to end your career reading books every day inside a federal prison?
No, but my wife is a wonderful human being and peace-loving person who sometimes looks in shock at the things that I do in the public eye, and has been known to utter on more than one occasion, do you think there might be another way to do that? Or do you have to go out of your way to pick every fight? And what I've said to her is what I'll say to you in response to that question. When you run, you're done. And I'm going out on my feet. I'm not going out running on my feet. And so here I stand, as Martin Luther once said, I can do no other. You want it, come and get it.
Norm Pattis, you deliver every time. And, it's interesting how really remarkably you're engaged into this January 6th, this historic moment. You've represented how many clients now other than
A
Owen?
bunch. I represented Jake Lang. We've got a petition in front of the U.S. Supreme Court on whether one of the charges fits the crime. They'll decide any day whether that'll be fully briefed. I've done a couple of the Proud Boys. I've represented a fellow out of Baltimore, Doug Wyatt. I've got Owen Shroyer. I've got other people that I have counseled who've not been arrested, some of whom may yet. I'm a lawyer, so you get in a jam, you call me, and maybe I can help you, maybe I can't. If I represent you, I'll do my best. Hopefully it'll work out. Often it doesn't. People don't call me because they've been picked at random. They call me because there are suspicions that they've engaged in criminal conduct, and sometimes they have. And my responsibility is to give them the best fight that I can, and I do. And I lose and I win. And when I lose, the haters have a field day. And they tell, and they talk smack about me. And I've got people who follow me around, wishing me ill will. I've taken to doing stand-up comedy as a way of seeking comic relief in life. And
okay, fellas, this is where we transition into the stand-up hour with Norm Pattis. Take it away, sir.
Here's one of the bits. Everybody hates me, even my wife. And I get this hate mail, on my email. I check it every day. The other day, somebody wrote and said, "Hey, I hope you die of ass cancer." It's true. They did say that. I thought about it for a minute and I wrote back and I said, "Why would I want ass cancer when I have you?" Another person writes, not necessarily the same day, "Hey, how do you sleep at night?" I thought about that for a while. And I wrote back and I said, "I count morons. You're number 127. Got another question?" Another person says, "You're such a loser." And I write back, "You're right, I am. I'm such a loser that the last time I was invited to give a keynote speech at a Mensa conference somewhere in the country, I didn't see you in the audience."
That's right.
I don't care about the haters. I am flattered that they know who I am, but I don't pay rent for the space I occupy in their heads. And, the fact of the matter is the Bill of Rights matter. Individuals matter. There is no mob as terrifying as a self-righteous mob. And I will die with my boots on fighting one of those mobs somewhere, some way, someplace. If somebody locks me up for something and puts me in prison, I'll make the most of it.
Amazing. And Norm, you're always the same, consistent as always. And I will say to everyone, please scroll right down. You see the Give, Send, and Go link. Donald Trump Jr. came out with this issued urgent plea over Owen Shroyer's treatment in jail. And guys, I have the background of corrections. That's how Norm and I met. I understand sometimes these systems can be abused. I actually have plenty of stories that can tell you how the judicial system works in coordination with these, these types of facilities. And they try to put the pressure on those inmates to try to, punitively damage them even more. We'll go out and support Owen. And Norm, please stay on here before we leave, or when I'm done here. I want to talk to you about something else, if you don't mind. Norm, thanks for coming on. Yeah. Where can people find you, see you, talk to you, your comedian acts and all that stuff?
So I have I podcast daily with Mike Boyer out of North Carolina. You can find us at Law Pod Daily. The name of the show is called Law and Legitimacy. We broadcast live Monday through Friday at 8 o'clock. Half hour.
I've never been invited on your show once, and all these times I've been inviting, I've never been invited once on. Maybe I don't have nothing to contribute. That's okay.
We almost never have guests, but if you want to be, you will be.
No.
Okay, no, you're coming.
I'm teasing.
You're coming on. I'll be in touch. You can find Law Pod Daily wherever you find, or Law and Legitimacy wherever you find podcasts. If you can't listen to it live, it's on tape. I'll be performing at the Mohegan Sun Comics on December 7th. Once again, I'm trying to do more stand-up opportunities. I recently attended a comedy fantasy camp hosted by Jay Leno and Adam Carolla. Had a good time there. Had a chance to perform at the Improv in LA. I'm looking for gigs in the Northeast. And I have a law office and a law practice. I'm in New Haven, Connecticut. Look me up, Norm Pattis. Don't believe half of what you read. The good stuff is true. The bad stuff, it's kind of true, but it's overestimated.
Thank you, Norm. Thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. So there you go. Norm Pattis. He came on to talk about obviously a very important topic, folks. And, you know, if you think about, like Norm said, your rights right now, you don't know whether or not whatever the federal government, whoever's in power, what they feel like they're going to do. And it's a concerning time in America. And I have to go along with Norm. Anything that goes along with the line of voting the control power politicians who are manipulating this system to take advantage of each and every one of these cases. We have to get those people out of office. And, you know, I'm pretty darn sure that God's even on my side on this one, guys. Donald Trump Jr. issues this urgent plea. I'm going to pray real hard for Owen tonight. I would recommend you do the same. And please consider going and giving some money to donate to his cause, because although you might think he's on a show and he's doing all this, this is not a cheap process, even for Norm to go into discovery and to go into representing. It costs a lot of money to be represented. And God forbid if any one of us ever need it, we want to be able to support each other as well. So that's it. Hope you enjoyed the show.